And good afternoon, everybody. This is Vinny Maletti with Maletti Law, the strongest name in law. The date now is October 20th, 2021. It is a Wednesday. It is actually a beautiful day outside. I am wearing a yellow t-shirt to signify the fantastic, beautiful sunny weather because I like to bring sun and sunshine into this beautiful home office of mine, which I'll be outside shortly. If you're wondering why this week's been a lot in the home office, it's just simply I've been so tied down with like things to do that, the travel time has been greatly preserved by not going nowhere. So, all right. So, without further ado, first and foremost, please do hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Make sure you sign up to the YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe so you get updates. Click the box. Do whatever. Go to the website www.malettilaw.com, www.malettilaw.com. That's Milletti law, malettilaw.com. Sign up for the newsletter so you could always stay in the know and as we make these updates and as things going on all over the place in the world around us, you are up to speed, you got everything, and you are good to go. All right, so today, what do we got here? So question comes in the mail, nurse gets terminated. So essentially, ultimately, she was denied her religious exemption, and she said, and then she was terminated, and she says, hey, I was wrongfully terminated. Okay, so it's more than just that, right? So it's not that, so when you're certain that you've been wrongfully terminated, it's got to be for a specific reason, right? So that adverse employment action that you suffered, the wrongful termination, needs to be predicated on your protected class, on some kind of, in this instance, on some kind of religious affiliation. So basically, what's happening now is you need to compartmentalize this and put this in two buckets, right? So what's happening now is nurse goes to hospital, says to the hospital, listen, I need an accommodation. I don't want to get vaccinated, whatever the case is. I need a religious accommodation. Hospital says either, here is your religious accommodation. It's okay. We'll come up with something. Or what's happening now is hospital is just rejecting. For the life of me, I cannot understand why this is happening, especially in light of the judge pushing back on the city, and now the city just filed their claim. The city, I think, just filed on the 18th. No, on the 13th, they filed the notice of appeal, and on the 18th, I think it was agreed to be heard, the notice of appeal. So I don't think that. I think it's premature to do that, but whatever. But the point is, hospitals are still, in some instances, are still just outright rejecting it and sending you one, right? So here's how it works. So you have, essentially, we're saying two things here, right? So we're essentially saying in the first bucket, we're saying that the hospital failed to accommodate me. They failed to accommodate my religious convictions. They failed to accommodate my deeply held religious preference. And then the second thing was saying you discriminated against me because of my religion, which ultimately led to my termination, right? So that's two buckets. So in this video, we're going to talk about both of them very quickly, high level overview. I have other videos that speak about this in greater detail, but I do want to just be a little bit quicker on this one because I do want to respond to these questions, and there's just a lot going forward, and I do feel like I say the same thing over and over again, so whatever. Okay. First bucket, failure to accommodate, all right? So an employer generally is required to reasonably accommodate the religious beliefs or practices of a person, of one of their employees, unless it causes an undue burden or an undue hardship to do so. Generally speaking, to raise to the level of whether or not your accommodation should be considered, there are three things that the employee has to provide to the employer. It's that the employee must possess a bona fide religious belief that conflicts with the employment requirement, that the employer has been notified of the religious belief, and that the employee suffered some kind of adverse effect or some kind of unjust discipline for failing to comply with that employee requirement. Okay, so those are the three things to kind of the three prima facie elements to be able to get there for an accommodation claim. Keep in mind that once you get those three things, remember it's prima facie, meaning on the face. Once you get to those three things, the burden shifts over onto the employer. Once it shifts on to the employer then has to respond. Keep in mind that the plaintiff doesn't need to show that they're the perfect religious candidate, right? So you could claim a religious exemption and not be the perfect Catholic and not be the perfect Jew. You could just not, it's just how it is. So I don't need to. I could miss Christmas. I could miss, I could be an A&P Catholic and only celebrate Ash Ash Wednesday and Palm Sunday. I could be an A and P Catholic and still get a religious exemption and not be penalized for otherwise, right? So I don't have to show you that I'm a perfect Catholic. I do have to show you that there is an issue of fact concerning my sincerely held religious belief, and I have to present it, okay? So assuming I get all three to the table, I show that I have a bona fide religious belief that conflicts with your particular vaccine requirement, that the employer was notified of his belief, and that I was going to be unjustly terminated for this vaccine requirement. So I've now made my prima facie case. I now go to court. The employer can come back. The employer has to show either A, that I don't have this religious conviction, whatever the case is, B, that it actually offered me a reasonable accommodation. That's also another question unto itself, whether or not the accommodation being offered is reasonable. You're seeing a lot of times now unpaid leave for indeterminate amount of time. That is not reasonable, people. That is an unreasonable accommodation. Offering you no money and no employment for an indeterminate amount of time is not reasonable. And I cannot believe that we have to go to a court to fight over this, but this is the country we live in right now. So we will deal with that. But the point is that it's stupid and it's not reasonable. Okay? And judges need to get off, like, cut the shit and get with it. And the third part is also the employee could push back by saying that it would cause an undue hardship to accommodate your needs. Basically an undue hardship in this context is a little bit lighter than any other general disability claim. An undue hardship in this context has to do with the employer has to bear more than what's known as a de minimis cost in order for this. So, the accommodation, the undue hardship is going to be based on more than a de minimis cost to the employer, right? So, I do have a video that discusses that, so I'd rather you go to the other video and look that up, because that gets a little complicated too, but whatever. Again, high level overview, right? So, just generally speaking, if the employer really says an undue hardship, the employee's got to show up what the undue hardship is, and that's really where it's to it, right? So that's how you get to that reasonable accommodation, failure to provide a reasonable accommodation. The second thing we're saying here is that the discriminatory intent, right? What they're saying is you discriminated against me. The nurse saying you discriminated against me based on my religion, you didn't accommodate me, you treat other people differently, whatever the case is, right? So just generally speaking, when it has to do with discriminatory intent in this context, you're asking for four things, right, before you can bring it to the court. You're asking, and this has to do with the wrongful termination, right? So if you're saying you wrongfully terminated me because you failed to adhere, you failed to provide me a religious accommodation, or you disrespected me, you terminated me based on discriminatory intent. My shirt popped open. Based on a discriminatory intent, you need to show A, that you had membership in the protected group, B, that you qualified for your existing position, 3, that you were actually terminated, and 4, you need to show circumstances that rise to an inference of wrongful termination. Circumstances that rise to an inference. It is inferred that you were wrongfully terminated. Not that you're not proving 100% certainty that you were wrongfully terminated. It was inferred that it could be inferred that you were wrongfully terminated. It could be assumed that you were wrongfully terminated, just based off the simple facts. So that is how you get to this wrongful termination claim. So you can't just say, you denied me accommodation, therefore I've been wrongfully terminated, and now I'm entitled to money. It doesn't work like that. Why do you say you were wrongfully terminated? What about your religious accommodation that you say you were wrongfully terminated? Is it that you made a request and your request was denied? Are you saying they hate Catholics? Are you saying they hate Jewish people? Are you saying that they have a policy that has discriminatory effect on people? Are you saying that you have indirect evidence that you've been discriminated against? There's a lot of other questions to ask that you want to take that, but don't just think that because they said no, you don't get your religious discrimination, you don't get your religious accommodation. Don't think that just because they said you don't get your religious accommodation that you're entitled to anything, because they need to elaborate on it a little bit. My recommendation, what would happen in this instance is obviously you pay and retain your attorney, or you could write it yourself, but you do need to get a letter on file. You need to assess your situation. You need to outline your situation, outline how you got here, the storyline that you got from point A to point B, the storyline, what transpired from the day you said, you had this religious accommodation, that you needed this, and what you submitted here, right? You need to go down the path until what each thing transpired, convey it in a message to your employer, and you need to move, and that's where you first start, because that is where you're going to determine whether or not you have any kind of claim going forward. Because again, just because you did not get accommodated does not mean you're entitled to relief, does not mean you're wrongfully terminated. There are still a ton of arguments to be made and a ton of debates that need to be had. So that's what needs to happen. I think that before you get into any kind of litigation, before you get into any kind of situation like this, you need to have that conversation, and you need to get that kind of paperwork on file, and you need to get the information out there. So push back, do as much as you can on your own, and for now, just to blow up your file. And then as you begin to paint a clearer picture of how you got here, how the determination was made, why they can't accommodate you, why they did this to you, why they said no, why they offered you this, why they offered you, unpaid leave, or why they terminated you, why they didn't accommodate you another job. As you get closer and closer and closer and closer, and you start understanding what the situation, what the picture is, you'll start realizing where your claim is going to lie, and then you'll know your best ways to move forward on that. So that's my spiel here for 10 minutes, 11 minutes. Again, click on the link, go to the website, get in the know, find out what you need to do. But it's you need to do your diligence. You need to look into things and work into things, and you need to push and move ahead, because like right now it's such a the situation is so much turmoil right now, there's so much confusion, and there's no guidance, and everybody's stonewalling you. Oh God, I hate that I yawn. That is a very I yawn because I'm tired, because I sleep 3 hours a night because I deal with this every day. And this state makes it very difficult to live your life like a normal human being, because every single day they come out with more garbage and nonsense every single day. And it's fucking almost impossible to keep up with this city. So it's almost impossible to keep up with the amount of bullshit that comes out of New York City, by the way. And quite frankly, you want this to end, you've all got to freaking be pushing on these people. So whatever. That's my spiel here. And if you have any questions, obviously let me know. Lady Law out. Hate the city. Hate everything about the city. Yours of law is love and lifts. You know where I am. Leave messages in below. Go to the website. Sign up to the newsletter. Do something. Call me. Have a great day.